They told me it was a miracle drug for his back pain. They didn't tell me it would take my son. That was a lie. For years, Purdue Pharma, the company behind OxyContin, knew their drug was creating a generation of addicts. They had the evidence. They buried the studies. And they got rich while hundreds of thousands of people died. We're about to show you the internal memos that prove the opioid conspiracy was very real. This isn't a story about some well-meaning medicine with unforeseen side effects. This is the story of a crime. A crime that's cost over 1 million American lives since 1999. All fueled by corporate greed and a masterclass in deception. For decades, one of the world's most powerful pharmaceutical companies, Purdue Pharma, ran a massive, deadly experiment on the American public. They knew their blockbuster painkiller OxyContin was dangerously addictive, and the proof has been hiding in plain sight. The opioid crisis wasn't a tragic accident, it was a business plan. A plan that other companies, like NCI's Therapeutics, would later copy with devastating results. They didn't see human pain as a problem to be solved, but as a market to be conquered. They became drug dealers in suits and lab coats, and in doing so, they unleashed a plague on this country. Today, we'll show you exactly how they did it and how they knew what was happening the entire time. So how did this all happen? Let's go back to the 1990s. There was a growing movement in the medical community, noble one, to start treating pain more seriously. Doctors were looking for better ways to help their suffering patients. And in 1996, Purdue Pharma came roaring in with what they called a revolution: OxyContin. Purdue made 2 huge, game-changing promises. First, they said one pill gave you 12 hours of non-stop pain relief, a massive step up from older drugs. But the second promise was the real kicker. They aggressively marketed that the risk of addiction was less than 1%. They told everyone, doctors, regulators, the public, that OxyContin's special slow-release formula made it safer and way less likely to be abused. It was sold as the perfect solution, real pain relief without all the baggage of addiction. Riding on those claims, Purdue launched one of the most aggressive marketing campaigns in pharma history. They built a sales force of crusaders and knights who were paid huge bonuses to push the drug. In one internal memo, a sales manager rallied her team to push for stronger doses, writing, "He who sells 40 milligrams will win the battle." They also paid doctors, so-called thought leaders, to travel the country and vouch for the drug's safety. And when doctors started noticing patients showing clear signs of addiction, like begging for early refills, Purdue had an answer for that too. They told their sales reps to call it pseudo-addiction, a completely fabricated concept that suggested these behaviors were actually signs the patient's pain was being undertreated. The solution? An even higher dose of OxyContin. It was a perfect, vicious, and incredibly profitable sales loop. It didn't take long for the miracle drug to become a nightmare. Stories started popping up from every corner of the country. A construction worker given OxyContin for a back injury. A high school kid for a football injury. These weren't terminal cancer patients. They were just regular people with normal pain. And they were getting hooked fast. Their lives and the lives of their families started to unravel. That 12-hour relief promise, it often failed, throwing patients into awful withdrawal and making them take more pills more often. While Purdue was publicly sticking to its less than 1% addiction line, the story inside the company was completely different. As early as 1997, just 1 year after OxyContin hit the market, internal reports showed Purdue knew about significant abuse. They knew people were crushing the pills to get around the slow-release feature, then snorting or injecting them for a massive, heroin-like high. A confidential 2006 Justice Department report later revealed that between 1997 and 1999, Purdue's own sales reps used words like street value, crush, and snort in 117 different internal notes. These warnings went straight to the top. In 1999, Richard Sackler, the company's president and a member of the founding family, sent reports about internet chat rooms where people were openly talking about how to abuse OxyContin. The company's top lawyer, Howard Udell, even wrote to another executive, "We have, in fact, picked up references to abuse of our opioid products on the internet." They knew. They knew the drug was being abused. They knew it was being sold on the street. Okay? But as long as the money kept rolling in, the marketing blitz never slowed down. So how does a company keep pushing a product as safe when its own files are telling them it's as a catastrophe? Through a calculated, deliberate cover-up. As reports of overdoses and addiction piled up, Purdue just doubled down on the lies. The real smoking gun isn't just one document. It's a mountain of them. Internal memos and emails kept secret for years until lawsuits finally brought them to light, prove that what the company said in public was the exact opposite of what it knew in private. In 2001, Purdue executives testified before Congress and claimed they had no idea there were any major problems with OxyContin abuse until the year 2000. Federal prosecutors later called that what it was, a lie, pointing to all the internal reports that proved the company knew about widespread abuse almost from day one. And this scam wasn't unique to Purdue. Other companies saw Purdue's billion-dollar success and copied the playbook. Insys Therapeutics started pushing a powerful fentanyl spray called Subsys. The FDA had only approved it for intense pain in cancer patients, but Insys wanted to sell more. To do that, they ran a criminal operation disguised as a speaker program. They funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes and kickbacks to doctors to prescribe Subsys for things it was never approved for, like chronic neck pain. These speaker events were often total shams held at fancy restaurants, sometimes with no one in the audience but the doctor's own staff, just to launder the illegal payments. In one case, a sales executive reportedly gave a lap dance to a doctor the company was trying to bribe. Insys executives were eventually convicted on racketeering charges, the same laws used to take down mob bosses. This was the culture. Profit at any cost. In a move that's almost too cynical to believe. Internal Purdue documents revealed that in 2014, as the crisis they started was raging, the company explored getting into the addiction treatment business. The plan, codenamed Project Tango, was designed to profit from the very epidemic they had created. A presentation pointed out that pain treatment and addiction are naturally linked, calling it an attractive market. First, they'd profit from starting the fire, and then they'd profit from selling the fire extinguishers. Eventually, the body count got too high to ignore. A tidal wave of lawsuits from states, counties, and grieving families crashed down on Purdue Pharma. In 2007, the company and 3 of its top executives pleaded guilty to federal criminal charges of misbranding OxyContin. They admitted they misled doctors and patients about its addiction risk and paid a $600 million fine. The executives got probation. Nobody went to jail. For the architects of an epidemic that had already killed tens of thousands, it was a slap on the wrist. The business of selling opioids kept right on going. It wasn't until hundreds of thousands more had died that a real reckoning began. Buried in thousands of lawsuits, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy in 2019. Insys Therapeutics did too. After years of legal fighting, a new settlement with Purdue and the Sackler family began to take shape in 2025. They agreed to pay up to $7.4 billion and give up the company, with the money going to help communities fight the opioid crisis. But for many, this feels a long way from justice. The settlement structure largely protects the Sackler family from facing personal civil lawsuits, even though they pulled billions out of Purdue while the crisis exploded. Although the deal allows some victims to opt out and sue the family directly, it's a far cry from true accountability. No member of the Sackler family has ever faced criminal charges for their role in the epidemic. They've never admitted to any wrongdoing. One of the lead attorneys for the plaintiffs said it best: Purdue were the worst of all the culprits. This wasn't just a business that made a mistake. This was a criminal enterprise that profited from death on a historic scale. The fines and settlements might sound like a lot of money, but they're just a fraction of the fortune they built on this crisis. The evidence is clear. They knew. From the very beginning, the executives at Purdue, Pharma, and the Sackler family knew their product was causing addiction and death. They had the reports. They read the emails. They watched the body count rise. And they chose to lie. They chose profit over people and marketing over morality. The settlements may force them to pay up, and the lawsuits may have finally exposed the truth, but the damage can never be undone. Over 1 million Americans have died from drug overdoses since 1999, and opioids have been the main driver. The crisis they started has morphed, with many victims turning to heroin and illicit fentanyl. And the families are left with one question hanging in the air. Is this justice? The only question left for the rest of us is, has anything really changed to stop this from happening again? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think these settlements are a form of real justice? Let us know in the comments below.